What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Origins with me, TheOneIntegral, as always. In today's episode, as you can tell, we're going to be covering Torchic, Combusken, Blaziken, and then we'll take a quick look at Mega Blaziken. So, as usual guys, be sure to suggest some more Pokemon down below in the commento section. Just tell me what you want to see from Hoenn or Sinnoh or any region, I don't mind, and I'll see what I can do in the future maybe. But for now, let's start having a look at Torchic. So Torchic is number 255 in the National Pokédex, and its Japanese name is Achamel. It is the Chick Pokemon and is a pure Fire type, being the Fire type starter for the Hoenn region. It stands 0.4 meters or 1 foot 4 inches and weighs 2.5 kilograms or 5.5 pounds, so it's a pretty small and a pretty light Pokemon. Taking a quick look at the models from Generation 6, you can see here shiny Torchic basically reverses the colours over. Instead of having an orange body and sort of yellow highlights, it has a yellow body and orange highlights, and then sort of slightly darker brown or like tan coloured feet and a beak as well. Apart from that, that's what I mean. Everything changes on Torchic apart from the eyes, but those are the basic changes there. So evolution wise, for Torchic being a starter Pokemon, it evolves fairly early on and will evolve into Combusken starting at level 16. So sort of your usual, you know, just the usual for a starter Pokemon really. So Torchic, what is Torchic? Well, Torchic is a small Pokemon, and obviously as you can tell it's covered in feathers because it's based on a bird of sorts, as we'll look at in a minute. As I said just now when we look at the models, most of these feathers are orange in its normal form, and you can see this orange head, the orange body, and the orange sort of the little bit of orange feathers on top of its head there as well. But it does have these yellow feathers on what are actually its wings. They look just like sort of like a highlight around its neck, but they're actually very small wings. Not that Torchic could really use them for anything, but these are the beginning of wings, I guess you could say. Or if not wings, just sort of like little things that come out. It probably has control over them, but they're not necessarily wings because they're not big enough, I guess. But those are, you know, what they are. But it also has these yellow feathers on its head crest as well. As I mentioned just now, the orange comes up a bit, and then the yellow sort of takes over, and you have this nice head crest coming up the top. As well as this sort of main body, Torchic has two of these short legs here that come off and end in some feet, which have 4 claws on each, 3 on the front and 1 on the back, like most sort of birds will have. You know, sort of some toes on the front, and then 1 or 2 on the back, or something like that. And along with this, it has a small beak and these very black eyes as well. And obviously the beak and the legs are the same colour, sort of a very, very light browny tan colour, and as we mentioned in the shiny form, it does sort of get a darker tan basically. So what does the Pokédex tell us about Torchic? Well, as we already know, it is covered in a fluffy coat of down. This is what it's described as in the Pokédex, so we can also tell Torchic's feathers are actually quite nice to hold, so it's probably a very nice Pokemon to pet and that. But as well as this, it has a flame sac inside its belly, inside its stomach. So, as we looked at, you know, some fire Pokemon in the past, we've seen they have fire sacs, or they have something inside them that allows them to breathe the fire. It's not like they can just produce it from the air. They have some sort of way of doing it. It's not going to make sense. It's not like obviously a very scientific thing, but it's not like they just create the fire. Most of them have some sort of source of the fire inside it. And Torchic has this flame sac in its belly that just burns on forever, basically, for as long as Torchic stays alive. And we can assume this is just burning oxygen or burning food, possibly, because obviously it's in its stomach, so maybe instead of Torchic breaking down food, it burns it. And, you know, this keeps the fire going, and, you know, provides nutrients around the body, and also allows it just to use the fire as a sort of a breathing attack, or, you know, whatever. As I mentioned, you know, this flame sac does allow Torchic to breathe and spit fireballs that it creates in its stomach, so we can assume it has some sort of control over the sac. Maybe it can just sort of store the fire in for a bit and then spit it out in fireballs sort of thing. That would make a lot of sense. But these flames and this fire can actually be up to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit hot, which is very hot, so probably better not to mess around with Torchic's flame sac too much. Also, due to the fact it's got basically a fire burning inside it, it's actually very warm to hug. As it's described in the Pokédex, so, you know, as I said, it's a very cuddly Pokemon, so very nice to sort of cuddle up to at night. It's probably a hot water bottle as well. Use it like that, just hug it into your chest, and it'll keep you warm throughout the cold winter nights. However, one other thing about Torchic is it dislikes the dark because of its inability to see. Obviously, you know, not many Pokemon at least can see in the dark. Not many of us can see in the dark very well. So most of us don't like the dark necessarily. Some people might, but most people don't like it. So it's just, Torchic has just got very inherent characteristics of most animals on Earth, I guess. They prefer the light and being able to see, basically. So what is Torchic based off of? Well, if you haven't guessed already, it's based off of a baby chicken. It looks basically, you know, very similar to a baby chicken. The feet and the legs exactly the same. Small wings. Obviously, when you have a little chick, you can't necessarily see its wings too well. They're sort of just in the body, so that makes sense there. And obviously chickens, or baby chickens, tend to have small heads, not small heads, big heads compared to their body, whereas actual normal chickens have a pretty small head compared to their body. So, you know, makes sense to Torchic there. And it's also a possible reference to the Basan, which is a legendary fire-breathing chicken from Japanese cultures. So that's most likely a very strong influence there, because why, you know, okay, it's a baby chicken. Why is the fire typing here? Why couldn't there be, you know, a water type chicken that, you know, shoots water out of his mouth, basically? And obviously it says why, you know, it's a reference to the Basan, basically. So, naming wise, the Japanese name Achamo is a combination of Akago, meaning baby, and Shamo, which is a breed of Japanese chicken, which we'll learn more about later on. So it's basically a baby chicken, baby Shamo, basically. That's, you know, not much else apart from that. It's very simple. And obviously the English name Torchic, if you guys couldn't tell just by looking at it, is a combination of torch, you know, sort of just, you know, not necessarily the real torch, but torch to burn, you have to burn something down, and also chick, from chicken. So Torchic, very similar there. Before we move on, we take a quick look at Torchic's size. Being 0.4 meters or 1 foot 4 inches, you can see there it's a pretty small Pokemon, coming just at the Ash's knees and just sort of my middle leg sort of area there. So it's a pretty small Pokemon. I guess about the same size as the normal chicken or a fully grown chicken, maybe a bit bigger. But yeah, that's generally it. It's a chicken size because, you know, it makes a lot of sense because it's based on a form of chicken. So that's that. Now, if we move on to the second Pokemon for today, which is going to be Torchic's evolution, Combusken. Now, Combusken, or Combusken, however you choose to say it, is number 256 in the National Pokédex, coming right after Torchic, and its Japanese name is Wakashamo. It's spelled with a Y, but it's actually pronounced with a H, Wakashamo. Basically, something like that. It's how Japanese speak, and that I can't really speak Japanese too well, but that's how it's said. It is the young fowl Pokemon, and is a fire fighting type. It stands at 0.9 meters or 2 foot 11 inches tall and weighs 19.5 kilograms or 43.0 pounds. Taking a quick look at the models from Generation 6, you can see when it becomes shiny, not much changes really. Its body might get a bit lighter, sort of the yellow feathers get lighter, the orange feathers get darker, its eyes go red rather than orange, but apart from that, nothing changes really. There's not a huge amount of change, there's sort of, I guess, more contrast to it almost, so as if you applied some sort of, you know, filter to it. Not much has changed really. Then, evolution-wise, we already know it evolves from Torchic at level 16, but will evolve further into Blaziken starting at level 36, so, you know, very, very basic for a starter Pokemon. So, Combusken is a medium-sized bipedal Pokemon now. It's grown since Torchic, now standing at 2 foot 11 inches, so it's a bit bigger, and it now, as Torchic did anyway, stands on 2 feet, you know. It's very simple. For the whole chain, they just do this. The upper half of Combusken's body is a yellow colour, and the lower half is an orange colour, sort of graduating, it's changing from Torchic's orange with yellow highlights to sort of yellow-orange split almost. And Combusken still carries across his head crest it had previously, except now this is orange rather than the yellow, so it's just sort of switched over basically. Combusken's wings, almost, or Torchic's wings, have now grown into actually proper arms, I guess you could say. And these are pretty long. You know, they are pretty long arms, and they each end in 3 claws. There's no particular hand shown there. It just sort of looks like the arms come out and the claws at the end. So Combusken can just sort of swing these around and attack people with it, basically. But its legs now seem a bit stubbier than they were as Torchic's. Not like too much stubbier, not really stubby, but they're not as long as they could be. And as we look at Blaziken later on, obviously we'll see the difference there. But these legs are pretty small. They have the sort of the big balls of just sort of, I guess, fatty muscle there, and then the sort of the smaller bit of the leg just peeking out with, again, the feet, and again 4 claws here, 3 on the front, 1 on the back, like most birds, as you would expect. And Combusken also has a short tail now, so that's a thing. Looking at the Pokédex for Combusken does tell us quite a lot about him here. We know that it has a loud, distracting cry. I can't remember what Combusken's cry is from action, main series games, but apparently it has a loud, distracting cry, and it can use this in battle to boost its concentration and also, I guess, distract its enemies. So it's a very nice technique Combusken's got there. No idea what this cry would sound like. But Combusken also possesses a strong fighting instinct. It's a very sort of aggressive Pokemon. Whereas Torchic, you can imagine him being very docile, just sort of plodding around, pecking around. Combusken basically looks for a fight and just has the instinct to fight, basically. He also has a Flame Sac, very similar to Torchic, and we can assume this is just a staple across the whole line, the Flame Sac being in the stomach and allowing this to breathe fire everywhere. And Combusken, its focus has gone not just from breathing fire, but also to actual physical fighting, whereas Torchic didn't have too many characteristics of that. We can find out that Combusken actually, it trains its legs by running across fields and mountains, so just sort of makes them more powerful. It just goes for a daily jog, basically. And doing this to train it allows these legs to move both fast and with pretty good power as well. And this actually means that Combusken can hit 10 kicks per second, so it's not brilliant, and also these kicks aren't going to be nice, they're going to be pretty powerful, so definitely not going to get in the way of those, really. So what is Combusken based off of? Well, obviously carrying on the chicken sort of trend, Combusken is based on a cockfighting chicken. Needs to be, chickens sort of, they were bred, they were raised to fight each other, and people would bet on it, and it's not a brilliant practice. It was fairly popular in Japan, I think, but now, I mean, modern day sort of, I wouldn't say laws, but stuff like that, guys. They're not as liked, I guess, and I'm pretty sure it's outlawed in many countries. But cockfighting chicken is what it's based off of. That makes a lot of sense. And again, it's a possible reference to the Basan as well because of the fire typing. So, naming-wise, its Japanese name Wakashamo is a combination of Wakai, which means young, and Shamo again being the breed of Japanese fighting chicken. So basically, young Shamo, or young chicken, basically, is what you get from there. And the English name Combusken is a combination of combust, which, combust, just to burn stuff, and chicken again, so burning chicken, basically. But it also could incorporate combat as well, because we have the comb at the start, so it could be combat and sort of combust and then chicken at the end, so combusken, basically, so mixing those together, because combat would link to the fighting type there. But, just a few of those could have been used there. Before we move on to Blaziken, let's take a look at the size of Combusken. Being 0.9 meters or 2 foot 11 inches now, it's grown a bit taller, and you can see here its head sort of comes up to about Ash's sort of stomach line and my hips, basically. So it's not the smallest Pokemon, but it's not too big at least. You wouldn't be too afraid of Combusken. Obviously, with those 10 kicks per second, you might want to be, but seeing it usually, you wouldn't be too afraid of it, I guess. So, let's move on to the final evolution for this line, which is Blaziken. Blaziken is number 257 in the National Pokédex, coming right after Combusken as usual, and its Japanese name is Bishamo, but actually spelled Busiamo. Bishamo, just how Japanese speak again. It is the Blaze Pokemon, and is again a fire fighting type. It now stands at 1.9 meters or 6 foot 3 inches, so it's grown quite a lot, and now weighs 52 kilograms or 114.6 pounds. Taking a quick look at the models from Generation 6, you can see in its shiny form, its orange fur becomes a darker red, and its yellow fur becomes sort of a darker yellow as well, or a brighter yellow, and what is beige on it becomes sort of almost a white colour. So it gets sort of, I guess, darker and lighter at the same time, just in different sort of ways there, basically. So, Blaziken is now a large Pokemon, 6 foot 3 inches, it's pretty big as you might expect, and again it's bipedal, just using its main 2 feet. It's covered mainly in orange feathers, but it does have these yellow feathers on its lower legs and also in the middle of its chest. And also these beige feathers that sort of they sort of start up its head. There are a few that sort of run down the back of its head, sort of like hair. But they also go across its chest, almost forming some sort of like jacket across its chest here, just sort of going down across chest and under the elbows, under the armpits rather, and back around to its back, basically. So it's got like a jacket of beige feathers, basically. Its arms have now, they haven't got much longer since they were Combusken, but they've gotten a bit thinner as well. Combusken's sort of just like straight out, whereas Blaziken's now sort of got a joint in the middle, and you can see they're a little bit thinner. And these end with grey hands and 3 claws on each, very similar to Combusken, except now it actually has hands rather than just sort of these 3 claws that stick out. So it's a bit more mobile, I guess. Blaziken also has these very long legs, whereas Combusken had sort of very short legs. Blaziken now has long legs as well, and you can see it doesn't necessarily have much of a foot, or it might. It's just covered by the feathers that go down. The yellow feathers, maybe they start where the yellow starts. This is where the feathers start, and then they just sort of come down and they sort of cover its feet. So you can just see the claws peeking out. I think there's 3 claws, possibly 4 claws, just carrying on from what we had previously. You can't really tell because you can't see them. But that's Blaziken there. It also has this very short, stubby, feathery tail as well, very similar to how Combusken had one. It's nothing much, it's just a short tail. In terms of its face and its head, it has almost a beak-like mouth. You can see its lower jaw there, and its upper jaw comes around. It has this sort of pointed bit, almost like a beak there. Whereas, you know, obviously Torchic and Combusken had actual beaks. Blaziken's looks more like a mouth really, but with beak-like features. And it also has a small head crest coming off its nose almost, with just a V shape, just sort of parting and going up next to its eyes, which are yellow again, very similar to Combusken's, and also have a very light blue pupils, which I really do like the look of, basically. Pokédex entries for Blaziken. Well, they tell us that flames sprout around its wrists while in battle, as we find that out in games and such, and they just look very cool. And also, the stronger the foe it's facing, the more intensely these flames burn. So basically, you're never gonna win. Blaziken's always got an edge almost. But, or as well as this, these wrists, this flame wrist almost, cause Blaziken's punches to scorch the enemy, because you can assume with fire being that close to you when you're getting punched, you're not going to come off lightly. So it's not just a punch, it's a punch and a burn, so you definitely don't want to get in the way of that. We also learned that Blaziken's feathers actually burn off and grow back every few years, just sort of molts them off and grows them again, I guess just to sort of keep a nice shiny coat of feathers, basically. And we also know it learns martial arts that use punches and kicks. It's a very physical Pokemon, being a fighting type, so it uses, these martial arts just to do battle, basically. And thanks to these long, powerful legs, it can actually clear a 30-story building in one jump, which is pretty darn good. I don't think there's many things that can do that in the world, really, at all. So what's Blaziken based off of? Well, it's not quite as simple as before. There are many inspirations for Blaziken here. We have, obviously it's based on a cockfighting chicken very similar to Combusken, specifically the Shamo breed because of how it's used in the names so much. So that's basically that there. And as you can see with the Shamo breed, you can see here that actually the Shamo breed is actually a pretty tall chicken. It looks very similar to Blaziken if you look at it. Long legs, a small body almost, and then a long neck. Or Blaziken hasn't really got a huge long neck, but you guys get the idea. So the body shape is very similar. Its feathery legs may have come from the Cochin chicken, which is just a chicken with feathers down its legs, as you can see in this picture. So that's probably or any chicken with feathers down its legs. And its head actually resembles that of Horus and Ra, which were ancient Egyptian deities. And as you can see, they have sort of the body of a man, but the head of a hawk. So with this beak and then sort of just the eyes, basically. Again, it's a possible reference to the Bulbasaurus because of fire-breathing chicken and such. But it could also be a reference to the Kurura, a human bird, is what I've chose to refer to it as in Japanese mythology. And basically, this is an animal or creature with a humanoid body, but with a face of sort of a bird, a hawk, almost like a chicken. You can't see it too well in that photo, but you can see a small beak, and basically, so it doesn't look like a human head, basically. So it may be a big reference there. And Blaziken also has a few traits of a phoenix. Specifically, in the Pokédex, we told it sheds its feathers off every few years, and that's what a phoenix does when it dies. It burns up and then it rises again from the ashes. So it's very similar to there. It burns its feathers off and grows some more. So it rises from the ashes of its old body, basically. So there's a very good few inspirations for Blaziken there than just sort of the cockfighting chicken and the Bulbasaurus. So naming wise for Blaziken, the Japanese name Bulbasaurus is a combination of burst or burn and Shamo. So, burst coming from burst or burn, and then Shamo. So burst possibly being a burst of fire, a burst of fighting spirit, something like that. And again, Shamo just being the basic fighting chicken. The English name Blaziken is very simply a combination of blaze and chicken. So, yeah, there's nothing really much to say apart from that. Blaze chicken. A blazing chicken, possibly. Before we move on to look at Blaziken's Mega Evolution, taking a look at how big normal Blaziken is, we can see it's actually a pretty tall Pokemon. 6 foot 3 inches means it's 3 inches taller than me. So it sizes up to me pretty well, and Ash is pretty intimidated by that thing as well. So I definitely wouldn't want to get into a fight with this thing, especially because we know how powerful it is. So keep your distance, guys. As I mentioned, Blaziken does have a Mega Evolution introduced at the start of Generation 6, so if we take a quick look at that now, we have Mega Blaziken. It stays a fire fighting type, there's nothing too much to say there. The height and the weight stays exactly the same, so we can assume the only changes to Blaziken here are actually sort of feature-wise, not necessarily size-wise almost. Take a look at the models from Generation 6, you can see a shiny Mega Blaziken actually doesn't change much, it sort of just gets an orange filter over it. Everything turns oranger. Its beige feathers on its chest and head turns basically a light orange colour. Its orange feathers on its body, or orange ready feathers, turn sort of a brighter orange, and then even its blacker areas also turn an oranger colour, and even its hands as well get orange added to them, so it's very orange, shiny Mega Blaziken. Looking at the, well, you know, Blazikenite basically, that's what you use to Mega Evolve Blaziken to Blaziken. Blaziken to Mega Blaziken rather, that would make more sense. So what changes when Blaziken Mega Evolves? As we said, it hasn't really gotten any different, it stays the same size. But the main sort of change here is actually its yellow markings have been replaced by black and sort of moved around a bit. It used to have these yellow markings down on the end of its legs and also on its chest. These black markings have moved up slightly, so sort of on its knee area, so from sort of the upper level of its legs, and also again on its chest. You can't really see it too much apart from on the Sugimori art, but these black areas seem to sort of have more of a flame pattern. Yes, the yellow ones, the yellow markings on Blaziken's legs had sort of spiky patterns, but if you look at how they're not quite spikes, these black markings, especially on the chest, it looks more like, actually like flames, so it's gotten a bit cooler in my opinion. And these beige feathers also changed to some sort of X shape, you know, the hair feathers that were coming just down off the back of Blaziken's head have also now raised up basically either side of its head, and the ones on its chest sort of just come down a bit further. It's now got a big X shape across its main body basically in beige colours, and it's fire on its wrists. It's always burning, we can assume, and it's also now a wispy sort of flame. It's not just sort of a ring of fire around its wrist, it's now wispy flames, so it can possibly use these flames to attack and, you know, scorch an enemy more. If it will just sort of like crash it across the face, the flames then come on behind and do damage like that possibly. Its head crest has also changed. Rather than being a sort of V shape now, it's become a singular pointed head crest, so it just sort of comes up and goes back, and I really like the design of that. Apart from that, not too much changes apart from on Mega Blaziken. Just because it's not too much of a big Mega Evolution change. It was one of the first Mega Evolutions revealed, so, you know, nothing too much changing there. But before we finish this up, let's take a look at Mega Blaziken's size. Being the same size as normal Blaziken, it looks a bit bigger in this picture here because of how the model is actually stood on one foot, so sort of jumping up a bit. But you can see here, it's very similar heights, you know, a bit bigger than me, and you certainly wouldn't want to mess with it anyway, would you? You would not want to mess with a 6'3" Mega Blaziken. Not at all. But guys, that is going to be it for today, for this episode of Pokemon Origins. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to hit the like button down below and suggest some more Pokemon for me to cover in the future episodes. You know, any Pokemon you want to know the origins of or why their name's that, just let me know down below in the comment section, guys. But for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.